Imagine, you enter a race, right? You ride your absolute heart out, you cross the finish line, take a hot shower, eat a massive dinner, crawl into bed, and finally drift off to sleep.
Sounds like a solid day.
Right. But as you are sleeping, the guy in second place is actually still out there on the road, like pedaling in pitch darkness, completely alone.
I mean, to our modern ears, that sounds utterly absurd.
Globally.
Because today, we expect elite sporting events to be decided by inches, by millimeters, fractions of a second. So the idea of an hour-plus gap between elite athletes, it just doesn't compute.
It really doesn't. But if you rewind exactly 1 century, that massive cavernous gap between first and second place wasn't a joke. It was reality.
Yeah, it was just how it was.
So, welcome to another deep dive. Today we have a mission for you. We're opening up this massive stack of sources, historical archives, data visualizations, some really intense technical breakdowns, and we're exploring the epic evolution of the Tour de France.
It is such a wild topic.
It really is. And we are framing it all around one central question, which is, what does it take to win the hardest bicycle race in the world? And how has that answer radically changed over the last 100 years?
It is a remarkable journey to look at. We're looking at a complete transformation here. And not just in the technology of the bicycles themselves, but in the actual physiology of the riders, the applied physics of the sport, and honestly, the psychology of the competition.
Okay, let's unpack this by going straight back to 1926. Because if we want to understand how ridiculously sophisticated the modern tour is, we need to establish a baseline.
Right, a starting point.
Exactly. And looking at the data from the 1926 tour, that baseline is just, well, it's pure unadulterated human suffering.
Yeah, and suffering might genuinely be an understatement here. I mean, the 1926 Tour de France was the longest in the history of the event.
Just brutal.
To give you a sense of the sheer scale, the riders had to cover 5,745 kilometers, and that was over 17 stages.
Which averages out to a grueling 338 kilometers per stage. Think about that for a second.
It's unbelievable.
It really is. That is like driving from New York City to Boston and then keeping going for another 50 miles every single day for nearly 3 weeks. On a bicycle.
And, not just any route either, because the organizers decided to start the race outside of Paris for the first time.
Right, in Evian.
Exactly, in Evian. And so the route closely hugged the entire outer border of France, which meant the riders were forced to tap into the brutal eastern mountains not once, but twice.
Oh, man.
Yeah, once at the beginning and again at the end when their bodies were already completely shattered.
The human element of this is just wild to me. Like, the story that really anchors this era is about the eventual winner, this Belgian rider named Lucien Buys.
Oh, the story is so intense.
It really is. So right in the middle of this absolute torture fest, during stage 3, he receives the news that his daughter's died.
It's an unimaginable psychological blow. I mean, any normal person, he legitimately considered abandoning the race entirely, which anyone would understand. But he made the decision to stay. He channeled that profound grief into a display of physical endurance that is, frankly, still hard to fathom today.
And that endurance was pushed to its absolute breaking point on stage 10, Bayonne to Lutron.
Yeah.
Labeled the toughest stage ever in the Tour de France.
For good reason.
Yeah. 76 cyclists started this stage at midnight.
Midnight.
Right.
Oh.
Nisa won the stage, and it took him over 17 hours to finish.
The logistics of early cycling just fell apart under these conditions. I mean, consider the gap. The second-place rider didn't arrive until 25 minutes later.
Wow.
And after a full hour, only 10 cyclists had crossed the line. The organizers were actually sending cars back out onto the mountain passes in the dark to hunt for missing riders.
Because guys were just lost on the mountain.
Exactly.
And by midnight, the following night, like 24 hours after they started, guys were still straggling in. The organizers had to extend the stage time limit by 40%. Just to keep the race viable.
Just so they'd have people left to race.
Right. And some riders were so exhausted they were secretly taking buses or hitching rides in cars. I mean, the guy wearing the overall leader's yellow jersey, Gustav van Slumbrook, literally told the race organizer he was quitting on the side of the road.
And what did the organizer do?
He just ordered him a car to the finish line.
It was absolute chaos.
So, honestly, looking at these historical accounts, this is where I have to push back a little on the terminology.
Oh, how so?
Well, calling 1926 a race feels like a major stretch to me.
I can see that.
Right. When guys are secretly taking buses and finishing 24 hours later, it's more like a mix between an ultramarathon and, like, a wilderness survival show. I mean, at the end of all of this, Lucien Bies won the overall general classification by 1 hour and 22 minutes.
That is a massive margin.
That's not a race, that's an attrition test.
What's fascinating here is that early cycling wasn't about strategy or micro-optimization. It was entirely about human grit.
Yeah, pure grit.
There was no hiding in the middle of a pack of riders to save 3 watts of energy. You know, winning meant literally surviving a course designed to break everyone else.
Wait, if we're talking about the machinery they used to survive this, we have to talk about the bikes.
No, the bikes were terrifying.
Because reading about the 1926 bikes, they sound like medieval torture devices. Fixed gears, heavy steel frames,
And the wheels.
wooden rims. Like one bad pothole, and your wheel doesn't just bend, it splinters into shrapnel.
The mechanics were truly terrifying. Imagine descending a steep mountain in the pouring rain on wooden rims and riding on incredibly narrow 21 to 23 millimeter tires pumped up to over 100 psi.
Oh, I can't even imagine the physics of that.
The contact patch with the road was minuscule, and braking on wet wood with old cork brake pads was practically useless.
Cork.
Yeah, cork. Imagine trying to stop a speeding car by pressing a block of wet soap against the tire.
Oh, wow.
That is the mechanical reality these guys were dealing with.
And the gearing. Like, you want to go uphill. You literally had to stop, take your rear wheel off, and flip it around to use a different size cog.
Which is just wild to think about now.
It's the difference between driving a manual tractor, where you have to muscle the gears into place, versus clicking a mouse. Because today's modern shifting is entirely seamless.
Yeah, the mechanical evolution is staggering. We went from flipping wheels to 11 or 12 speed cassettes. Systems like Shimano D2 or SRAM ETAP have completely eliminated mechanical cables.
That's all electronic now, right?
It's electronic and wireless.
But I want to pause on that, because why is wireless electronic shifting actually better? I get that it sounds futuristic, but what's the mechanical advantage over a simple physical steel cable?
Well, it comes down to torque and precision. When you were stomping on the pedals up a 10% incline, a physical metal cable stretches under the tension.
Oh, so it physically deforms.
Exactly. You can miss a gear, or the chain can drop entirely. With electronic shifting, you literally just tap a button on the handlebars with your pinky finger.
That's crazy.
Right. A micromotor in the derailleur moves the chain the exact millimeter required instantly every single time, regardless of how much pressure you are putting on the pedals.
Okay, that makes sense. But speaking of things making sense, we need to talk about the tires.
The great tire revolution.
Yeah, because the modern Peloton has completely ditched those rock-hard, skinny tires. They all run wider 25 to 28 millimeter tires at much lower pressures.
They do.
Now hold on, because that completely defies common sense to me. I was always taught that skinny, rock-hard tires meant less friction on the road. Why did it take the smartest cycling engineers in the world 80 years to figure out that softer, wider tires are actually faster?
It is a brilliant paradigm shift in physics, honestly. The old logic assumed the road was a perfectly smooth surface, like glass.
Right.
And on glass, yes, hard and near is faster, but real roads have bumps, they have cracks, aggregate. When you run a rock-hard tire at 100 psi, the bike essentially micro-bounces over every single imperfection.
Oh, I see. So you're wasting forward energy by bouncing upward.
Precisely. It's called impedance. Testing proved that wider tires, run at lower pressures, actually absorb and deform around the road imperfections.
That is so counterintuitive, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. The rider's energy stays directed forward rather than upward. Add in modern disc brakes, and riders have vastly superior grip and stopping power in any weather condition.
Okay, so the wheels are sorted. What about the frames? Because reading about the aerodynamic revolution is wild. A major turning point happened in the year 2000, right?
Yes.
The governing body, the UCI, imposed a minimum bike weight limit of 6.8 kilograms.
They did. And manufacturers hit that weight floor almost immediately using modern carbon fiber.
So they hit the limit right away.
Right. So since the bikes literally couldn't get any lighter by rule, the engineering obsession completely shifted.
Right, if the rules say bikes literally aren't allowed to get any lighter, where do the engineers go next? I mean, they can't just pack up and go home.
No, they go straight to the wind tunnel. This is the concept of free speed.
Free speed. Okay.
Yeah. At the speeds these athletes travel, aerodynamic drag is the single greatest force they have to overcome. So teams optimize every millimeter to slice through the wind.
Like hiding the cables.
Exactly. They hide all the brake cables inside the frame itself. They shape the structural tubes to act like airplane wings.
Materials completely changed, too.
Yeah.
Like the last metal frame to win the Tour was Oscar Pereiro's magnesium Pinarello in 2006.
That was the end of an era.
It really was. Since then, it has been exclusively carbon fiber, which can be molded into these perfect aerodynamic shapes.
And Pinarello is a dominant force in this space, holding a record 16 official Tour wins.
Wow, 16.
Yeah. And looking at the historical data, it is impartially noted in our sources that Lance Armstrong rode truck bikes during his 7 consecutive wins.
Right, though all of those titles were officially revoked due to doping.
Right, exactly. But regardless of the rider, the engineering effort across all these manufacturers is just immense.
It really is. Like, I think about it like Formula One technology, right?
Yeah.
Where F1 tech eventually trickles down to the minivan you drive to the grocery store. Except here, you can actually go out and buy the exact same bike they race on.
Which is pretty unique for professional sports.
Totally. Today, the tech has advanced so much that a team like the Ineos Grenadiers will use one highly optimized bike, the Pinarello Dogma, for almost the entire race.
One bike for everything.
Yeah. It's engineered to be just light enough for the extreme climbs, but aerodynamic enough for the flat sprints.
But, as you pointed out earlier, a perfectly engineered carbon fiber machine is completely useless without the perfect human engine to drive it.
Exactly. So how has the rider's body, the human engine, evolved?
Well, the physiological data shows a massive shift. Since 1990, the average height of a Tour rider has remained remarkably stable, right around 180 to 182 centimeters.
Okay, pretty standard.
But their average weight has dropped by a full 5 kilograms.
5 kilos. Man, when you are already an elite athlete with almost zero body fat, dropping 5 kilos is a staggering amount of weight. Why is there so much focus on the scale?
It is all about the power-to-weight ratio.
Okay.
Think about the physics. When you are riding on flat ground, your absolute power output is what matters to push through the wind resistance. But the moment the road points up a 10% mountain grade, the wind stops mattering and gravity takes over.
You are literally lifting your own body weight up a mountain.
Yes, dropping 5 kilos is the equivalent of taking a heavy sack of flour off your back while trying to sprint up a flight of stairs.
Wow, that paints a picture.
It completely changes your efficiency.
But the race still attracts physiological extremes. Right?
Absolutely.
Because looking at the rosters, you have giants like Marcel Seberg at 198 centimeters,
Sure.
racing alongside someone like Samuel Dumoulin, who is just 159 centimeters.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, or the 1973 winner Luis Ocaña, who weighed an incredibly light 52 kilograms.
You'll always have outliers based on specific roles,
Right.
like a tiny climber versus a massive sprinter. But the average age trends are fascinating, too.
Are they getting younger?
Actually, thanks to massive advances in sports science, riders are competing longer. The average age of a Tour winner is now 28, and the average participant is 30.
Huh. But then you have these young phenoms who just shatter the curve, like Tadej Pogacar winning the whole thing at age 21.
Which is incredible.
Right. That's the youngest since Henri Cornet won it at age 20 way back in 1904. Which brings up a really crucial point. We've talked about bikes maxing out the weight limit and riders getting leaner and leaner. If the bikes are getting lighter and the riders are getting leaner, are we hitting a biological wall? Is there an absolute ideal body for the Tour?
This raises an important question about how the modern peloton operates, because through constant data analytics, it has become somewhat homogenized.
Meaning they all train the same way.
Basically, they aren't just guessing anymore. Teams use continuous glucose monitors to track exactly how much fuel a rider is burning in real time. And the team chefs weigh out every single gram of rice and carbohydrates on the team bus to perfectly match the calories burned.
So the romantic era of the cyclist who rides on feeling, eats a giant steak, and drinks a glass of wine the night before a stage that's completely dead.
Completely. Everyone is so medically and physically optimized that the sport is no longer just about finding the best natural athlete.
It's about engineering one.
Yeah, it is about systematically building the most efficient human engine possible within the absolute bounds of human physiology.
Okay, so if you put the perfectly optimized carbon fiber bike together with the perfectly optimized data-driven human engine, what happens?
The margins get very, very small.
The margins of victory shrink drastically. We go from Lucien Bice winning by 1 hour and 22 minutes in 1926 to Greg LeMond winning by a famous 8 seconds in 1989.
8 seconds.
And that shrinking margin sets the stage perfectly for what is happening right now, the defining rivalry of the 2020s.
Tadej Pogačar and Jonas Vingegaard.
Yes. If you are listening to this and you love a good sports rivalry, this is the one. Between 2021 and 2025, these two finished first and second in 5 consecutive tours.
5 in a row.
Pogačar won in 20, 21, 24, and 25.
Yeah.
Vingegaard won in 22 and 23. They have completely locked out the top of the sport.
And what makes it a classic rivalry isn't just that they are evenly matched physiologically.
No.
No, it's that they have completely contrasting styles, which dictates how they try to break each other.
Oh, I see.
Pogačar is an instinctive, highly aggressive all-rounder. He attacks from far out, relying on raw power and feeling. Analysts compare him to legends like Eddie Merckx and Bernard Hinault.
Right, whereas Vingegaard is the ultimate tactician. He is measured, calculating, and relies heavily on his team's strategy.
Very analytical.
Yeah, he is a pure specialist when the road tilts upwards to extreme altitudes. Even Pogačar himself has called Vingegaard the best climber in the world.
High praise.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So how do you actually break someone who is your physiological equal?
You target their specific threshold limit.
How so?
Well, in 2021, on the iconic high-altitude slopes of Mont Ventoux, Vingegaard dropped Pogačar. It was just a brief moment, but it was the very first time the cycling world saw a crack in Pogačar's armor.
And Vingegaard's team took note of that.
They absolutely did.
They realized Pogačar could be isolated. So in 2022, Vingegaard and his teammate Primož Roglič used team tactics perfectly. On the Col de Galibier, they repeatedly attacked Pogačar.
It was brutal to watch.
They literally took turns throwing punches. One would sprint, forcing Pogačar to chase, then the other would sprint. They exhausted his glycogen stores until Pogačar finally cracked on the final climb, losing 3 whole minutes.
The physiological toll of that is brutal.
Yeah.
And in 2023, Vingegaard used a different tactic, which was crushing pacing.
The time trial.
Right. He delivered an unthinkable performance in the individual time trial, taking huge time. The very next day, on the brutal Col d'Alons, the accumulated fatigue broke Pogačar completely.
Just totally drained him.
His glucose was gone. He famously told his team over the radio, "I'm gone, I'm dead."
But the resilience of these athletes is insane. Fast forward to 2024. Just months before the tour, Vingegaard is in a horrible crash.
Oh, that crash was awful.
He suffers a collapsed lung and multiple broken bones. He misses all his preparation races. Pogačar, meanwhile, is dominating, winning the Giro d'Italia just weeks prior. Yet Vingegaard still lines up for the tour and manages an incredible second place to a dominant Pogačar.
The physical toll these two inflict on each other is unprecedented. And it brings us to a statistic that perfectly illustrates the modern era.
Okay, let's hear it.
At the end of the 2024 tour, analysts added up all their head-to-head racing over 4 years. After over 13,000 kilometers ridden and 328 hours of racing against each other.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
They were separated by exactly 3 seconds of actual racing time on the road.
3 seconds after 328 hours of racing.
It's mathematically mind-blowing.
It is. Imagine you are Tadej Pogačar. You've been riding for 3 weeks, your heart rate has been at 170 beats per minute for an hour, and you are trying to find 3 seconds of advantage. Where do you even look?
You look everywhere.
It is literally a space race. I mean, after Vingegaard beat him in 2023, Pogačar completely overhauled his entire offseason. He changed his training, his equipment, his nutrition, specifically to find the marginal gains needed to beat one single person.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this rivalry has literally altered the landscape of global professional cycling.
How so?
Other top-tier riders are choosing to skip the tour entirely just to avoid facing these two in peak form.
No way. They just opt out.
Yeah. And in global races throughout the calendar, entire team tactics shift drastically depending on whether Pogačar or Vingegaard is on the start line.
It's the gravitational pull they have on the sport. So, looking back at our mission today, we have traveled an immense distance. From 1926, where men rode wooden-rimmed, heavy steel bikes through the pitch dark for 17 straight hours just to survive a mountain stage.
To today's hyper-optimized, data-driven peloton, where riders fight for a literal 3-second advantage over thousands of kilometers.
The sheer scale of innovation required to shave off that hour and 22-minute margin is a testament to human ingenuity.
It really is.
And that's exactly why this matters to you, listening right now. Whether you are prepping for a boardroom meeting, analyzing market trends, or just simply love a good story of human potential, the Tour de France is the ultimate case study.
It really applies to everything.
It does. It shows us how relentless competition forces us to evolve both technologically in the tools we build and physically in the biological engines we train.
Which leaves us with a fascinating prospect to consider.
What's that?
Well, if bicycle aerodynamics are regulated to their maximum limit, and human body fat percentages and power-to-weight ratios are rapidly approaching their absolute physiological ceilings.
Which they seem to be.
Right. Will the Tour de France of the next century be decided not by physical superiority at all, but entirely by AI-driven strategy and psychological warfare?
Wow. It really makes you wonder. The next time you see a rider cross the finish line in Paris, winning by just a handful of seconds, think about 1926. Think about the guy who was still out there in the dark, pedaling on wet wooden wheels an hour and a half behind, just trying to survive.
It's a completely different world.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. We'll catch you on the next one.
Virtual's me.